If you were to ask a gamer what's the best shooter game out there, you get a variety of answers. Call of Duty, Overwatch, Apex, Fortnite, or maybe even Splatoon if they have good taste. While each of these games have their own unique differences, they all have a few things in common. One of these similarities will help me to attempt to answer why shooters will always be meta in Splatoon. However, such a complex statement will require further reasoning and evidence, so let me break it down for you. If we want the most comprehensive answer to such a dilemma, we must go back and start from the very beginning. Now, what did you notice in that clip? Gee, I don't know, maybe the fact that almost everyone was using a shooter in that trailer? Ever since 2015, shooters have been the main weapon focus for Splatoon, and understandably so, of course. Throughout the series' lifespan, new weapon classes have been highlighted and introduced, but shooters have always remained center stage. After all, Splatoon is a shooter game, the weapon class is literally in the name, so it'd be kinda strange if shooters weren't really that good, right? While Splatoon has weapon classes like blasters and rollers, you wouldn't describe it as a blaster game. Shooter games are called shooter games because they focus on shooters, which leads to my next point. What's that something Splatoon has in common with games like Fortnite and Call of Duty? Whoa, what do you know? Guns! And guess what? Gamers, especially us Americans, really like guns. And Nintendo knows this, they aren't dummies, usually. They see the huge success mainstream shooter games are having, so they make sure to keep shooters the focal point in their own game. That doesn't mean they don't market or advertise their points or weapons of differentiation, but they know if they want to penetrate into the shooter video game market, they need to keep shooters their primary focus. I mean, come on, that's just basic marketing 101. But my goodness, you don't even need a marketing perspective to see why shooters are the favorite child. Just looking at raw inventory numbers tells the same story. I ran the numbers for you so you don't have to, but just look at these. It's pretty obvious that Nintendo wants you to have plenty of shooters to choose from. And the more shooters you have, the higher chance you get of a good weapon and a good kit. We already went back to the beginning, but now let's take a broader review of the history of shooters. If you've never watched the Splatoon meta weapon analysis video from Chara, first you should really go check it out, but more importantly, my claim of shooters being the obvious favorite class aligns with Chara's historical timeline of the different meta seasons. Basically at any point in Splatoon's history, at least one shooter has always been meta, and that's no coincidence. It's not like chargers or rollers have always been consistently meta. I suppose sloshers are probably the closest, but not nearly as much as shooters. Over this past decade, Nintendo has shown us that shooters will always be relevant in the competitive scene. But make no mistake, a weapon does not need to be meta to see competitive action. Any weapon is good in the right hands, but for the purposes of this video, I don't see how anyone could reject the notion that shooters will always be meta when they consistently have been for over 10 years, and Nintendo has done nothing to majorly change that situation. Perhaps the most compelling argument lies in what shooters are capable of compared to any other class. If you asked any reasonable competitive Splatoon player, would you rather your team comp be all sloshers or all shooters, I guarantee you as a former high-level competitive player myself that 99% of players would opt for all shooters. Now wait a minute, Forge, you might say. That's not a fair comparison. Shooters have way more variety than sloshers. And as we already discussed, you're right, because Nintendo wants to keep shooters meta with a fat selection. But the reason why players would prefer all shooters over any other quad class is because shooters are so well-rounded. Any weapon can slay or defend well, but to do all that and be relatively mobile is something that separates shooters from the rest of the pack. It's just so much easier to be a playmaker with a shooter than anything else. And that isn't my own personal opinion or bias. This is factual evidence documented over the past decade for why shooters have been and always will be meta. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed.